Good evening. Welcome everyone to our electronic Regional Council meeting on May 25th, 2022. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Regional Council is practicing physical distancing. I'm present in the chamber with Councillor Shantz and staff. Everyone else is participating electronically. I will now call on Will Short, Regional Clerk, to do the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Verbanovic.
Present.
Councillor Jaworski.
Present.
Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Jowett.
Here.
Councillor Erb.
Here.
Councillor Nowak.
Present.
Councillor Kiefer. Councillor McGarry.
Present.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Harris. Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Strickland.
Here.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Galloway.
Present.
The rest from Councillor Rents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I would like to acknowledge the land on which we gather virtually today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of these Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements, and their contributions to our community. What I have learned from Indigenous people is that our attachment to the land should be one of stewardship rather than ownership, and I'm honored to make this journey with them. I'd now entertain a motion to reconvene in open session. Moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor McGarry. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. That is carried, colleagues. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, we will now have a COVID update, and I would ask Dr. Wong and David Aoki to provide a vaccine update. Welcome, Dr. Wong. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Councillors. Kathy will project my slides. Thank you, Kathy. If we can go to the first slide. We are seeing signs that the most recent wave of the pandemic continues to recede. Wastewater signals are continuing their slow descent. We're seeing fewer outbreaks in high-risk settings, and there has been a reduction in the number of hospitalizations associated with COVID-19. Bearing the emergence of variants that could change the trajectory of the current wave, we can expect the key indicators to continue to trend downwards in the coming weeks. Our wastewater signals suggest that the presence of COVID-19 is still relatively high at this time. We can continue to optimize our protection through layers of protection until the circulation of COVID-19 is at a lower level. Next slide, please. While the risk of COVID-19 may be decreasing, we've seen that vaccination has been a very powerful layer of protection. Being up to date with the number of recommended vaccines is the foundational layer of protection. A recent study from Public Health Ontario has estimated the impact of booster vaccination on COVID-19 hospitalizations during Omicron in Ontario. From December the 15th, 2021 to March 27th, 2022, an estimated 5,828 hospitalizations have been prevented among individuals 18 years and older as a result of the effects of the booster vaccination campaign. Locally in Waterloo region, from November the 18th, 2021 to May the 18th, 2022, those who were unvaccinated were 2.9 times more likely to be hospitalized and 7.9 times more likely to be admitted to the ICU in comparison to those who were fully vaccinated. Those who are unvaccinated accounted for 36.4% of the non-ICU hospitalizations and 60% of the ICU admissions. And they represent 10.9% of the population. With that, I will pass it over to David Aoki for the latest on the vaccine rollout. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wong, and thank you, Madam Chair. As of today, the regional vaccine dashboard is showing that 89.1% of those 5 years of age and older are immunized with at least one dose of COVID vaccine, and 86.2% of those are fully immunized. We continue to offer first, second, and third doses at all our sites and mobile clinics. We have also provided over 33,000 fourth doses to those who are eligible. Today, I want to update that the region of Waterloo will close the Boardwalk Vaccination Clinic on Sunday, June 12th. The Boardwalk lease ends at the end of June 2022 and is not being renewed. In the 16 months since opening its doors, the Boardwalk has become a reliable and consistent presence for residents of Waterloo Region to receive the COVID vaccine. Over the last few months, demand for vaccine has waned, with COVID vaccines being readily available from many pharmacists and doctors' offices, meaning we no longer require large mass immunization sites to meet the needs of our residents. The decision to close the Boardwalk continues our strategy of moving to a more mobile and accessible clinic model to those who may not be able to access fixed sites, pharmacies, or primary care. We will continue to offer COVID vaccine through mobile clinics and at smaller fixed sites clinics such as 99 Regina Street South in Waterloo and 30 Christopher Drive in Cambridge. In April alone, our mobile clinic teams provided more than 1,400 doses with clinics held in collaboration with community partners, regional libraries, long-term care, retirement homes, congregate settings, immunization, and many others. We continue to build partnerships and look for new locations and opportunities to immunize those who may not have access to vaccine otherwise. Our strategy will remain to surge when needed or should vaccine eligibility be expanded, and continue to work closely with our healthcare partners to ensure vaccine is available to all residents. Since March 4th, 2021, the Boardwalk has been open daily, with the exception of Christmas Day 2021. Since opening, it has provided more than 240,000 doses to be given to more than 160,000 unique clients. The Boardwalk has been a truly community effort. Many people came together to make Boardwalk a success. We have onboarded 679 on-site staff between administrative staff, IT supports, pharmacists, nurses, nursing students, physicians, dentists, and paramedics, as well as over 700 volunteers. I'm incredibly grateful to everyone for their passion and dedication to making our community safer. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, both Dr. Wong and David. We have some questions. Councillor Clark, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's probably a question for Dr. Wong, and I do apologize if your graph showed it and I just didn't see it in its tiny print. With workplaces contemplating ending their vaccination mandates, I wonder whether you can share any research on the efficacy of vaccination on reducing spread. So I'm triple vaxxed. Am I less likely to, I know I'm going to get COVID because I did, but am I less likely to pass it on to someone else?
Yes, the short answer is yes. Now with Omicron, or since the emergence of Omicron, the risk of becoming infected, even if you've been fully vaccinated, is much higher than previous to the Omicron variants. But it's still the case that if you're up to date with your vaccines, you have the least chance of becoming infected. And if you do become infected, then you have much lower chances of developing a severe form of the infection.
And would the severity of infection have an impact on my ability to spread it because of duration? Yes. Or okay, thank you.
That's one of the reasons as well that people would be less likely to spread it because their period of infectiousness could be reduced by the vaccine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to David. David, the vaccine buses have been a huge success in North Dumfries. Every time I drove by them, there's been lineups. In fact, they brought chairs out for some of the seniors to sit down while they're waiting in line, which is a wonderful thing. 5-year-olds and under, when can we look at vaccines for under 5?
We don't have a firm date yet, sorry, through you, Madam Chair, and to answer your question, Councillor Foxton, we don't have a firm date yet on 0 to 5. We still are waiting for federal approval of the vaccine, and then we will be waiting as well for the National Advisory Committee on Immunization to make recommendations, usually shortly followed by the province to make eligibility availability, or what the eligibility will be, and we presume that it may be coming, but we don't have a firm date at this time. I don't have a line of sight, but we know that it has been submitted to the federal government. The vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, has been submitted for their approval and consideration.
Thank you. And in North Dumfries, you're going to keep up the vaccine buses? Because I'm eligible in June, but there's no place in North Dumfries to go but the vaccine bus.
We are planning, and this is exactly why we're continuing our mobile strategy. We will be continuing the bus and other mobile options to all our communities to make sure that those who don't have access through other means do have the access where they live, work, or play.
I thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, thank you. And this is to David, and it's basically a comment. The bus was at the WRC in Wilmot the 1st of May, and my executive assistant and her husband went, and they found it extremely slick. I think they put in about 15 minutes total, and they were really impressed. So I felt I needed to pass that along, because I know it's coming back in June, and then it'll be my turn for my 4th. So thank you.
So David, you can add the descriptor slick to describing the vaccine bus. Councillor Shantz.
Yeah, I'll also add my thanks for the vaccine bus. I know it's gone over well here as well. And I'm not sure if you said this or not, but are vaccines still available at pharmacies?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, thank you very much. They are still available. It may not be in the same numbers that we did experience like in the peak of previous, but they are still widely available throughout our communities. Some of the rural communities, obviously with less pharmacies, may have more, but what we recommend is people call their pharmacy, and also continue to check our website, because our mobile teams are trying to reach areas where we know there are no fewer pharmacies or fewer primary care availability for clients.
Okay, and if I may, Madam Chair, to Dr. Wong. So I tested positive about a month ago. Does that affect when I should go for my next booster shot?
Yes, thank you for the question, and through you, the chair. For most people, it's generally recommended that you wait 3 months after infection before you get a booster shot. If you're still waiting to get a booster shot because you weren't eligible before, for example, and now you are, but you have been recently infected. So in general, it's approximately 3 months that people are recommended to wait to optimize the effect of the booster dose.
Okay, and sorry, this is a personal thing, but so that's for my 4th shot, not the 3rd one. Same rule?
Yes, for the 4th shot. Yes, same thing.
Councillor Foxton.
Just to clarify, and through you, Chair, that if for anyone in North Dumfries listening to this, our pharmacy does not have the vaccine. They've been trying to get it, but I guess that's regulated by the province who gets it. So there is no vaccine offered within our township except for the bus. So thank you.
So Dr. Wong and David, thank you very much on behalf of the 630,000 people that you make sure are safe and feel safe. And I know you continue to be innovative and figure out where the puck is going. We all would love to wave goodbye to the pandemic, but I know that you're keeping our options open. So thank you on behalf of council for all that you continue to do.
Thank you.
We have no, excuse me, no petitions. We do have a delegation, and I would like to remind any delegation of some guidelines that we give to every participant. Please leave your video and camera off and your microphone audio muted until you are called on to speak. Today's delegation registered after the deadline and has been allotted 3 minutes to speak. We also ask that you leave the meeting once your issue has been addressed, and you are then welcome to watch the remainder of the meeting being webcast live via YouTube. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in immediate removal of them from the meeting: interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning your camera on at inappropriate times, hate speech, or defamatory comments. One last reminder, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. Our delegation is Jesse Burt, overview of the policy opioids related to legislative framework for drugs. So Jesse's here to speak on this issue. Jesse, welcome.
Hello.
And you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, council. My name is, I'm going to mute myself from, sorry, hold on. I can hear myself. Oh, no, now I can't. Okay, sorry. Good evening, council. My name is Jesse. I am a harm reduction outreach worker, and today I'm here representing the drug action team. So our group was originally created as a subcommittee of the Waterloo Region Crime Prevention Council. Council, as you may recall, we presented a report called Issues of Substance to you at the end of March. Our report showed that legalization with strict regulation was the best drug policy model to adopt in order to really address this poison and overdose crisis we find ourselves in. The Waterloo Region Crime Prevention Council endorsed this approach, and you, council, asked your staff to look into our report. And so tonight in your package, the RIDS has come back with a report with 2 recommended motions for decriminalization. We are in the midst, as you know, of the worst poisoning crisis in our history, an opioid crisis. This is a failed drug policy crisis. We have about 20 Canadians dying every day from a preventable cause of death. We need every tool and solution. In Waterloo Region, we lose about 3 people a week on average. It's far more than COVID. As an outreach worker, this last week was really another heartbreaking week for me. On Friday, I had a coworker of mine lose their son. On Monday, someone who had supported died. And then yesterday, I got an email of an 18-year-old who died. This has been going on for years now. The last 6 years, our region has lost over 500 people, and this will continue without if we don't have action at all levels of government. We have a flawed system, and we really need some structural change. We need to endorse decriminalization of simple possession. Many places have already applied for this exemption to decriminalize. So Vancouver was first, and now all of BC Jesse has decriminalized. And recently, Toronto Board of Health and Chief Medical Officer of Health unanimously endorsed and submitted requests to decriminalize, along with many other cities who are also considering applying for an exemption. I know my time has been cut short, so I'll try to keep this short, but I don't need to. I know the word decriminalization might bring up some hesitancy and uncertainty, but the evidence is beyond clear that the war on drugs is ineffective. Has resulted in massive health, social, and economic harms to both communities and individuals. We're kind of sort of creating a revolving door. Criminalization is costing us billions of dollars, and it's creating barriers, not connection to support. So I encourage you, council, to sort of look at the RIDS report and to seriously consider the recommendations that they put forward, to write a letter to the provincial and federal government. And yeah, I just want to thank you for your time. And I look forward to the discussion around it. That's it.
Thanks, Jesse. I was cutting you a little bit of slack because you started a couple minutes late.
Yes.
Councillor Clark.
No questions really for Jesse. Heard you speak a number of times. I just want to thank you for that and what you do, and say sorry for your losses this week and over the last few years.
Thank you.
Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Jesse, also my condolences. I agree with the decriminalization. I think it's a smart move. I'm not sure it helps in any way with preventing overdoses, but I think it helps in not targeting the individuals that already have a lot to deal with. But are you aware of it helping in overdoses in any way, shape, or form? In Vancouver, did it help at all?
So through you, Madam Chair, so they've applied to decriminalize. They submitted their application over a year ago. Health Canada still hasn't gone back to them. So they've applied for the exemption, and then all of BC government, the province also applied. They haven't gotten back, and then just recently Toronto has also applied. But in terms of answering your question, we can look at countries like Portugal, who they've been decriminalized now for the last 20 years. And sort of the first 14 years, they like to encompass their numbers. They saw crazy numbers. Their overall prevalence rate of substance use dropped by 75%. They had their overdose deaths were at one point the highest in all of the European countries, but now they dipped down to the lowest. And so yes, like in terms of being able to, like the real success in decriminalization is freeing up, like in Canada alone, we spend about $7 billion every single year incarcerating people with substance use. And so essentially what Portugal did was they took all of that money that they put towards criminal justice systems, and they put it straight into prevention, treatment, harm reduction, like just healthcare, and they saw massive improvements. And so it's about what you can do with all that freed up money. But also, reducing the stigma, being able to allow people to actually call 911 when there's an overdose. Like there's an abundance of sort of reasons why decriminalization. There's definitely limitations to it. That's why we endorse legalization with strict regulation, sort of a safer supply. But decriminalization is a step in the right direction, but it definitely has its limitations, and I'll be the first to talk about that, but it is a step in the right direction.
Yes, thank you. I totally agree with you. We have to follow up with the proper resources to help once we've decriminalized, and also maybe follow what's once the Portugal started. So,
Thank you. Councillor Bravanovich.
Thank you very much. And Jesse, thank you for coming in. And I too want to express my condolences on your recent loss, as well as others before in the important work that you do. In terms of the report and the recommendations that are before us tonight, this is what RIDS has supported, which is a little bit different than what we talked about a month ago, in that talked about legalization, and this is really talking about decriminalization, safe supply, and so on. Correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, and I just really wanted to emphasize that nuance, because I think it is an important one, and I'm glad that you came out to support this evening, and to know that through your comments and what's in here in the report that this is what the working group that has been doing such great work for a long time is actually recommending. So thank you for that. And Madam Chair, if there is not a mover for this at the appropriate time, I would certainly be pleased to move it.
So I assuming you're talking about the report.
Yeah, the recommendation.
Yeah,
Sorry.
okay. Well, we're just dealing with the delegation right now. Thank you. Councillor Galloway.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Jesse, to you for coming out tonight, but also to the drug action team for staying the course and keeping operating. and doing that very valuable work in our community. I'm just wondering if you could explain to members of council, very briefly, mind you, what is involved, what happens with that exemption that you were referring to, that Vancouver, now the province of British Columbia, City of Toronto have asked Health Canada for, and of course the federal government's not being very prompt in responding to that, because that's yet another piece that I think locally we should be considering at some point in time, maybe not necessarily right now, but maybe you could just quickly explain that.
Yeah, essentially, like, I know I followed the Toronto one more closely, but we actually had a speaker from that worked in Toronto Public Health come and actually do a webinar series with us just recently, and it was great. They got to explain sort of the process they went through. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but essentially, yeah, they went back and their own sort of public health and their own drug strategy looked into it, and they applied for an exemption. It's under sort of a Section 56 under the Controlled Substance and Drug Act. So what's interesting is that every community is kind of has had a different process in terms of how they've done it, and they've all kind of asked for slightly different things, because it's not. It's kind of hard to explain that there's lots of different ways that you could decriminalize, and we tried to even explain that in our last report, that there's different ways that you could approach decriminalization, and there's ways that the community is asking for, and there's ways that the governments are going to probably push for and implement, and so there's lots of sort of conversation right now as to what that could look like, both in different municipalities, but also nationally. But in terms of what I would suggest is, if you want to take steps towards that, would be getting the RIDs to look into that process and seeing what next steps would need to be done, and lay out a little bit of a plan, but really have it community driven and led.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Erb.
Thanks, Jesse, for your presentation. And this is probably the 5th or 6th time that I've been part of a meeting where you've made a presentation. And every time the story seems to get heavier and heavier of the implications of addictions and use of drugs in our community. And I just want to commend you and your colleagues for staying at it. The toll is significant on the family members and the individuals who lose their lives. But we need to recognize the toll it takes on folks like you, who continually are there day after day to walk with these people and support them and try and turn things around for them. So I commend you and your colleagues for your perseverance, your dedication to this cause. Thank you on behalf of the community. And when it comes time and Councillor Vannebeck is willing, I'd be happy to second this report.
Jesse, see how you're inspiring everybody? They're jumping to the next part of the meeting. Councillor McGarry.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. And I couldn't have said it any better than my colleague ahead of me on the thank you, and also recognition of the toll that it takes on the entire community, not just the family and the friends of those who have suffered a fatal overdose, but certainly on the support staff and medical teams that try and help at the last ditch effort. I think that can't be underestimated, and certainly causes significant burnout to our teams that are out there trying desperately to staunch the flood of these opioid poisonings. My question to you would be regarding the report in front of us, and certainly I fully support the work that the drug action team's been doing, and have had the privilege really of listening to the report presented several times. I think that from those that are watching at home, they might think decriminalization is kind of the magic solution. But I'm wondering if you could just sort of briefly outline that this might be one tool in the toolbox, and there's certainly others that are needed in order to try and prevent some of these overdoses from occurring.
Yes. Essentially, like we're scared of doing as like sort of advocates is that we have to keep pushing at it, but we know that something like fighting for decriminalization is a tricky one, because we know it's a step in the right direction and it will have a lot of positive impacts, but in terms of actually sort of radically reducing the deaths anytime soon, we're not super confident in that, just because it won't replace that toxic drug supply that we talk about, sort of that cocktail. And there's a very real reason that we've now seen the likes of things like fentanyl and benzos and all these things in the current drug supply, and how deadly that has become, and that there are solutions. Again, not just, we often look at Portugal just because they're the first ones to do it, but honestly, if you look at other countries like Switzerland, they're even doing it better, because they have a sort of a wide scale safe supply available for people, and it's mind blowing when you look at what they're able to do with that, and how well people can get to the point where they're fully sort of what our ideal is, which is fully employed, fully connected to their friends and family, sort of fully healthy, living their best lives while taking sort of drugs that we have arbitrarily, remind you, and usually from racist reasons, declared bad or good. We want to definitely set realistic expectations as to what decriminalization can do, because there is limitations, but 100% do it and endorse it. But know that we need to that is just step one out of many that we need to take to even begin to address this crisis. And so I would definitely echo that we need more prevention, we need more safe supply, we need a lot of things, but I won't get into all that. And just a comment on the last two councillors, thank you. I'll try to my best to relay that to other staff members that are in the work. It's hard, and I struggle with this a lot of not wanting to ask workers to have to talk about. It's hard for me to talk about, but having to ask mothers to speak about this, because I want their voices heard, or people who use drugs voices heard. But I struggle with asking, because it is not easy to talk about, and it's re-traumatizing every single time. So it's really a difficult balance of wanting to get people's actual, who are living it, voices heard, but at the same time, it's so many friends and families have been lost, and so just know that it's a lot more people were wanting to delegate tonight, but had to step down and didn't, and hopefully they still sent in letters and emails. I'm not sure if, thank you for just the opportunity again.
Thank you, Jesse. And with your indulgence, Chair, I just wanted to pass along my heartfelt thank you, and just hold your heart steady and support it. Just know that the support's out there for you, and certainly lean on others. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jowett.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. And Jesse, also my condolences. I'm sorry that I don't know too many people who haven't lost somebody to this, and I was out to you, and of course those who have been impacted. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions from your expertise. I don't really understand the nature, and I'm sure a lot of my colleagues would admit that they don't understand the nature of narcotics to some degree. And when you tell me that we would decriminalize, what drug would we use? And I think I've been told, but I just want to confirm it. And what is the nature of acuity on the human brain? Because some of the things we don't talk about openly as much as we should are the ramifications of high acuity addiction on our communities outside of the community of our marginalized folks that are suffering an extreme amount of trauma. So can you tell me what the nature of acuity would be with the drugs that people are considering from a decriminalization perspective?
I'm not sure fully what you mean by acuity, just because of that we use that word in our work for like more related to mental health. So I'm not sure if you're talking about about substances themselves or about mental health, but.
Because as you know, more use and higher usage leads to acuity, and I'm not sure what the nature of the drug that's being proposed, how it would impact folks.
So for decriminalization, it's as simple as and it's decriminalization of simple possession. So it's as simple as if you have a small amount on you for personal use, that you won't be charged and therefore criminalized and put on a criminal record, have warrants, go to get incarcerated, be added to charges, and start this sort of cycle that we see of this revolving door of, and it's more. So yeah, it's not yeah, we're not talking about safe supply or yeah, legalization.
I know that has been discussed. Okay, so let me ask you from another angle, if you'll just indulge me just a little bit here, Jesse. So I understand it's critical for us to stop the drug poisoning. I mean, I know that I don't even know what's in the drugs now that are on the streets. I hear horrible stories. But the people that make the money from this sort of nefarious endeavor, that's how they're used to making money. And have you learned in your research and your questions of how they would look towards redeeming that or mitigating that lost revenue? I worry that they'll start to maybe target kids younger, or we'll see prostitution go up. And I know these are things that aren't solvable. I'm wondering if you've heard anything that could help put some of our fears to rest, that would be intended consequences of this loss of revenue.
Yeah, I remember you brought this up on our last presentation. Yeah, the sort of the fear that so that we've because of our current laws and because we don't sort of prescribe people what they need, we've kind of birthed this unregulated market. So we don't we don't call it a black market anymore because that has a lot of sort of negative connotations to it. But the unregulated market is absolutely massive. It's globally it's $1 trillion industry. But here locally, it trickles down. But in terms of if you, the goal would be to undercut that market and to make it less profitable by just essentially making a more desirable option for folks. And the hope would be, and so if you look at, again, purely evidence of other countries who have actually already done this before us, you see, again, in Switzerland, all those things that you're kind of worried about in terms of organized crime, prostitution, sex work, all these things, it really decreases significantly over time. You're actually under, the reason those markets exist is because there's profits to be made. And so unless they can, you're kind of worried about them switching to a brand new way of making money, but again, if we're taking away their major source of money, and so they would actually, you'd hope that you'd see that it would die out rather than if they can't just find another way of making money. And it's usually out of it's usually for folks who are living it every single day, who are sort of struggling with homelessness or addiction or mental health. It is more about survival than it is it's nothing to do with making money. It's purely survival. There's a demand, and the unregulated market is filling that demand.
I know
that
those
makes any sense.
Yeah, and I know those are big questions to ask. I'm almost asking you to look into a crystal ball. I just wondered if there were some nuances or insights that you could provide, Jesse, and I do really appreciate you attempting.
Thank you very much, Jesse. I guess I didn't have to caution that you wouldn't get questions because you got lots of them. So thank you very much for being a representative voice of a very important sector of our community. And thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
Colleagues, I'm going to pull up the overview of policy options related to the legislative framework for drugs. It's 13.1 in our agenda. And call on Dr. Wong, Johanna Han, a coordinator of WRIDS, Erica Poulin, and Eugene Fenton, who provided written submissions and will be here to answer questions. And we have already had a mover and a seconder. Councillor Vrbanovich has moved it, and Councillor Erb, right, was seconding it. Okay, so Dr. Wong, if you'd like to talk about your report, and then we'll deal with recommendation.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Good evening, Council. The purpose of this report is to provide evidence and rationale supporting the recommendations submitted by the Waterloo Region Integrated Drug Strategy, also known in short as the RIDS, of which Public Health is a member, for Regional Council to endorse the decriminalization of simple possession with expanded access to health interventions to help address the current overdose crisis. This would mean adding Regional Council's voice to that of the RIDS, as well as others, as we've heard tonight, such as Mr. Burt's, in our region to advocate to the federal and provincial governments for a modernized legal framework for drugs, including decriminalization of simple possession, and increased investments in prevention, treatment, and harm reduction programs, including safer supply programs overseen by health professionals in the context of ongoing research. The complete criminalization of drug possession is not effective in reducing drug consumption and results in social, economic, and health-related issues. The complete criminalization of drug possession also disproportionately affects Indigenous, Black, and other racialized and marginalized populations and perpetuates stigma, discrimination, and over-incarceration of people who use drugs. Decriminalization of simple possession removes criminal possession of small quantities of a controlled substance, but maintains criminal penalties to illegal drug manufacturers, dealers, and traffickers. And last but not least, I would like to acknowledge the presence of members of the Waterloo Region Integrated Drug Strategy, the RIDS, whom Chair Redmond had named, who are here with us this evening in case Regional Council may have questions of the RIDS. I would like to thank them very much for being here tonight. Among them, as you've heard, are Joanna Hahn, Coordinator of the Waterloo Region Integrated Drug Strategy, and Eugene Fenton, Chair of the RIDS Steering Committee. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Jonathan Mall, Program Manager for Substance Use Programming in Public Health. We'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wong, and thank you to the team for being here. These are very comprehensive recommendations. Councillor Vrbanovich.
Thanks, Chair Redmond, and thanks, Dr. Wong, for your overview of a very well-written report and an important report. And really, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you and the members of the RIDS committee for all of the work that you've done on this for many years, but in particular for the work that's been done in this short period of time since we originally had a presentation about a month ago. And I think it is important to acknowledge that I think that month has been very helpful in really bringing some focus and clarity to what was being presented and asked for a month ago and where we ultimately are today, because there is a very big difference between legalization and decriminalization and access to safe supply, which we're talking about. And I certainly am prepared to support this wholeheartedly. I'll also note that it's my understanding that this is also something that is wholeheartedly supported as well by those who are responsible for enforcement of Canada's drug laws, and that's the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. And, you know, I know there are people in our community who will struggle with this issue. Just like they struggled with the notion of us opening a CTS site. But the reality, and we've seen it with the CTS site, is that, you know, many of the issues and concerns that were expressed have not come to fruition, that in reality, many lives have been saved. And in fact, we've had an opportunity to interact with people and get them onto a path towards some wellness for those who are at that stage in their addiction journey. I think being able to deal with this in the manner that's being proposed is recognizing that what we're talking about is a health care issue, is a medical issue, and one that as a society we need to deal with differently if we want to start seeing different outcomes. And quite frankly, we've seen in this region, in this province, and in this country over the past several years, but in particular during the pandemic. And so thank you to all four of you, but that are on that are here, but in fact to all of you that have been part of this important work. And hopefully we'll see the support that we need from the federal government in this regard. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Galloway.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to add my support to the recommendations tonight, and appreciation to the members of the RIDS for the work that they put in. I also want to make sure that people are aware that the Crime Prevention Council also had a fair bit to play in regards to this particular matter, having raised it and putting it forward previously, as well as the drug action team. So I think that the research is really quite clear when it comes to decriminalization. Yes, there will be people who you know, intuitively might think it's the wrong thing to do, just as they did, as Councillor Urbanovic said, with the CTSs. But you know, the CTS is also proven its value, and this will, as well as the Safe Supply pilot project that we have going. And you know, harm reduction really is one of the key pillars of our integrated drug strategy. And this is yet another piece of that pillar, and there are more pieces to put into place. So I really want to commend the group for doing this and bringing it forward, and we'll heartily support it. The question that I had, and it's by no means a criticism, I'm just curious more than anything else about whether or not RIDS has given any consideration to the exemption matter. Personally, I think it's probably prudent to wait to see what Health Canada does with the applications in from Vancouver, the province of British Columbia, and City of Toronto. And of course, it has been, as Jesse said, quite some time since some of those applications have gone in. And it seems to be some reluctance possibly to deal with that. And it's probably prudent for us to wait to see what the outcomes are of those various applications that have gone in. But I'm just curious whether or not RIDS has that on its radar, and whether or not it's something that it might visit at a time when possibly sometime in the future, but in my view, possibly when Health Canada does finally, let's assume, provide the exemption.
Who would like to answer that?
Sure, I can answer that question.
Great.
So thank you for the question. Yes, the RIDS is aware of the class exemptions that the City of Toronto and the City of Vancouver have submitted, and it is on our radar. Currently, we have not been talking about, whether or not RIDS would submit for an but perhaps after this meeting, once we pass a motion to endorse decriminalization, that could be some conversations as we move forward into the future about next that the Waterloo region could take. Not sure if that fully answers your question there, but
yeah, thanks. That's fine. I just want to make sure that it's on the radar. I'm not schooled enough in it yet, and I think it's prudent, as I said, to possibly wait for Health Canada's ruling on the other applications, and then maybe Waterloo Region wants to consider it. But I just wanted to make sure that it was on the radar. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I just want to add my support to the recommendation. This is a public health crisis of sorts, maybe not quite like the pandemic, but it's getting there. And it's a physical and a mental health issue, and also related to economics. So it's very complex. So while I do agree with the recommendation, I think the most important part is what we do to support the root causes. And similar to our response to the pandemic, where we went in and provided supports and tried to deal with it at that level, and also with the CTS site. I think it's important that we spend our resources and focus our resources on the root causes. What came to mind when I read the report was when we do our roads, we spend our resources repairing the moderately worn roads before they become dire. And, I think we need to do that with our residents as well. It sounds like kind of a harsh comparison perhaps, but, if we can help people before things get too bad for them, I think we'll have a much better region. So I agree with the recommendation for all the reasons that are outlined here and that have been articulated. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Shantz. Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The strength of our region and the dedication of those involved in caring for some of the most vulnerable are demonstrated here again with your tonight and in the preparation of this report recommendation. Thank you very much. Like others, I think we need to do everything we can to move this from the criminal justice system to the public health system. In my humble opinion, my thoughts are that the current practice is an injustice as it is currently dealt with and has nothing to do with justice. Addictions are a healthcare issue, and those dealing with this illness do not deserve to be treated like criminals and publicly embarrassed in the court system, and that only exasperates the problem. I think those individuals living with addictions and their families need to be acknowledged the same way as we acknowledge those who live with diabetes, heart disease, and other illnesses, and should have the freedom for those who are suffering to have the stigma removed from the illness of addiction and be treated in a public care system and not in the criminal justice system. We simply cannot afford not to move in this direction. Addiction illness cannot be cured in jail, but only in an appropriate healthcare system, and treatment centers like the House of Friendship Addiction Treatment Center in Cambridge is where individuals belong and not in the court system. We all recognize, I think, that the ball is in the court of the federal government to decriminalize the use and the provincial government to provide healthcare options. However, I think we do have a responsibility to advocate and lobby the upper levels of government for these changes to be made. And I think by doing so, our advocacy sends a strong message to those locally living with addictions and their families that we do want a better way for their family. And as a council and community, we're doing whatever we can to receive proper health care for those with the illness of addictions. It's a big shift to turn around, and but we need to start now. And of course, I think there'll be elements of the public that will object to this initiative and not understand. However, we do have an obligation to advocate for proper health care for everyone, regardless of the circumstances. So thank you for bringing this forward, and best wishes for your continued work in the community.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair Edmund. Thank you to the team here for your report, your excellent work always, and your advocacy, which I think is to me the most valuable thing. Just to Councillor Galloway's comments, I can say that Health Canada moves very slowly. My organization applied to be an urgent public health needs site back on January 10th, and we're told that the turnaround for the application was 7 weeks. And 4.5 months to the day later, we're still working our way through that process. So I don't expect speed from that body. My question actually has to do with Safe Supply and the Safe Supply project that we have happening in the community right now. I know that that's a health and not a public health initiative, but I'm wondering to what extent you may be involved and what you may know about it at this point.
Dr. Wong, who wants to take that one?
I'm wondering if Jonathan may want to provide some information about the Safe Supply program, which is run by partners such as Sanguine, but run at the Consumption and Treatment Services site as part of wraparound services. Jonathan, would you be able to say a few words?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Wong. And through you, Madam Chair. So the Safer Supply Program in Waterloo Region began last October, October 2021. It's operated at the CTS site, and it's funded by Health Canada, and it is offered as a partnership between Sanguine Health Centre, the Inner City Health Alliance, and the Working Centre. And essentially through the Safer Supply Program, health practitioners prescribe legal pharmaceutical opioids to clients to replace the illicit and toxic street supply. And they're offered to high-risk individuals who use unregulated street-level substances that are high risk for overdoses and overdose-related.
So yes, it's part of a series of pilot and research projects that Canada is funding to learn more about the impact of programs like Safer Supply. We do know that the wait list is much longer than the number of people who currently can have a place in this program. And emerging evidence is promising, although we still need to continue the research and to ensure that the benefits continue to outweigh potential harms. And so what part of the advocacy that we are recommending that Regional Council support is also advocacy to the federal and provincial governments to expand supports like this in the context of ongoing research.
I appreciate that. I think there's maybe a couple of hundred participants in the pilot, something in that area anyway, not a huge number.
Yeah, it's what we understand, and maybe the people from the RIDS could have more information. But my understanding is from partners that the demand and the need for it is much greater than currently what is available.
I'm sure. We touched a little bit in our conversations about the importance of decriminalization, which will bring about all sorts of social benefits for sure. But I think that it's a safe supply that is going to really deal with the poisoning crisis once we can deliver it on a larger scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Councillor McGarry.
Thank you very much, Chair, and through you. I also appreciated this report and wanted to acknowledge the work that the Crime Prevention Council members did on this, as well as the Waterloo Region Integrated Drug Strategy and the Drug Action Team, who have collaborated and researched over many years to find sort of the best examples of what was trying to make a dent in other jurisdictions. So certainly support this work, and I will be supporting the motion. I think that some of my questions have already been asked, including safe supply. I think that it's important for people to understand that this report before us tonight and the idea of decriminalizing simple possession has been in the works for many, many years and seems to run counterintuitive to what we know about kind of the war on drugs. And I believe that the first individual I ever spoke to about the possibility was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and was the former chief of police of BC, who sort of first launched this idea to me. And I understood from them that the simple possession ends up carrying so much weight on an individual if they have had a health issue like addiction. And that weight carries on them so that they're not able to get back into a good job scenario or the job market because of the stigma of having a possession charge against them. So I think that the way I understand it, I think the way that our police chief now understands it is that simple possession and decriminalizing it means that those that then can get the treatment that they need and to get off the drugs then have a much brighter future in job market and getting themselves back on track and truly leaving the health issue of addiction behind them. But those that are still carrying the weight of some of those charges from a health issue then end up not being able to move ahead like we would like them to do and how they and their families would like to do. So I think that my question would be really confirmation about the change in heart from the police chiefs down to our medical personnel now in how we are trying to change drug policy and our rules around drug possession in order to benefit and have a better outcome for those that are suffering addiction. So just wondering if you could comment that and see if this is kind of the thinking behind this report. Thank you.
So, Councillor McGarry, I'm not going to ask Eugene Fenton to channel the chief, but I know that chiefs of police do support this, and it's probably no small coincidence that he happens to also be chair of RID's steering committee. Eugene, do you want to speak at all from a policing perspective?
Chair Redmond and members of council, thanks for having us. First, I want to thank everyone for their support so far, and we're really excited to bring this report to you. We're not excited that we need to, but we're excited that we're able to. So yeah, to your comments, Councillor McGarry, absolutely. There's been a major shift in how policing specifically looks at criminalization of simple possession. And simply a recognition that it doesn't work. We're not going to arrest our way out of this crisis, and it is a public health crisis, and it is a medical condition crisis. So it's really just that recognition that that has been, as you said, straight from the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, right down to all of our community-based organizations that RIDGE represents, which is over 130 partners within our region, and then including obviously public health recommendations that are captured in this report. So we're very proud to bring this forward. We think it's the right move on behalf of the RIDS in general. And it's certainly with my dual role, working for the police service, on a personal level, I think it's the right direction to go to support these people who need help and get them into the right public health stream instead of a legal justice system stream.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that. Colleagues, it has been moved and seconded. I'll now call the question. All those in favor, please use your icons to vote yes or no. That is carried. And again, thank you on behalf of the community to the Waterloo Regional Integrated Drug Strategy and the people that are here representing it. You do great work and make a huge impact in our community. So thank you very much. Colleagues, we will now revert back to our agenda. And the next item is minutes of previous meetings. I would like a mover and a seconder, and there are 9.1 through 9.9 of previous meetings. Moved by Councillor McGarry, seconded by Councillor Clark. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. I don't know if those were old votes. I looked down to read, and it looked like everybody was voting. And that is carried. Thank you. Communications, there's council information package that was distributed electronically for your information. I would now entertain a motion to go into the committee of the whole to consider reports. If I could have a mover, moved by Councillor Nowak, seconded by Councillor Erb. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. So that is carried. And Councillor Armstrong, you're right. Your little red tech goes right over Wilmot, and it's easy to miss. So we will now consider finance reports. The reports are A through E, or hang on, F. But Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I'd like to pull 12.1.5, the local Elmira Transit Service.
Thank you. Okay, so if I could have a Councillor Foxton, do you have a comment?
Are we on the Admin and Finance Committee reports or a separate finance report?
What is she saying?
I think I'm not up yet. I think I wanted Administration and Finance Committee, the summary, and we're not there yet. So I'll wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're not there yet. I'm trying to keep up. Okay, so could I have a mover and a seconder for all finance reports, but we will take okay, moved by Councillor Jowett, seconded by Councillor Galloway. So we will vote on all except the local Elmira Transit Service, which we will take separately. So could you please use your icons to vote yes or no on all of the other agenda items under that? That is carried. Councillor Shantz, do you want to speak to this one, or you just want it taken separately?
I'd like to speak to it, please.
Go ahead.
And I won't be too long, but I do want to remind you a wee bit of the history of the start of our local bus route. And it came from a desire to help folks get around town, but also to connect our residents more easily to Route 21 bus into Waterloo. It was set up as a free service, as it would allow some of our mobility clients to use the around town bus rather than the mobility service. And it was successful. It was a local service run by local people and a volunteer board. The drivers knew many of the passengers. Our council and our local service board were thinking outside the box. We set it up above board as a pilot project, knowing that the region has a responsibility for transit. What we're getting here is putting the service back inside the box. It will cost our taxpayers 33% more because of the constraints put on the service by the RFP. And our riders will have to pay GRT fare. It will no longer be free. If the region is truly interested in being innovative, we can't put everything into one box. We have to learn to manage the services we provide within each local context. Affordable housing might look a little different in Cambridge than what it does in Waterloo. Health services might look a little different in Wilmot than it does in North Dumfries. And local transit might look a little different in Woolwich than in Kitchener. Or maybe it looks similar to a neighborhood in Kitchener. We're 7 different municipalities sharing resources through the region when it makes sense to do so. This does not make sense. I have one question, though, that I want to get clarified, and that is, if the ridership declines and this new model no longer makes sense, can we cancel the contract or not renew, or are we going to be bound to continue this indefinitely?
So I think maybe Mr. Schmidt, is that a question you can answer?
Through you, Madam Chair, I would have to check the contract itself, whether it has the ability for us to cancel without penalty. I suspect not, because this type of a contract would require the contractor to purchase a vehicle or lease a vehicle, and they would have to amortize that over the period of the contract. And obviously, if we canceled that contract, that would dramatically change it. So I can't say 100% sure, but I suspect we would not be able to cancel that without some sort of penalty. And I see Mr. Dyer is also here, and he may have more details on the specific.
Mr. Dyer?
If I may, Madam Chair, I also can't confirm with certainty what the cancellation clause is, but I would say that the award is for an initial 1-year term with an option to extend. So certainly there will be opportunities to review ridership and performance over the course of the first year in anticipation of making a decision as to whether or not to extend further. I hope that's helpful.
That is helpful. I just wanted to make sure that that was the case. We sort of got caught on a couple of things in the past. The pilot project worked really well, and I certainly support our community bus. It's been a success story, but I'm going to vote against accepting the proposal because of the increased cost to our local taxpayers. 33% increase seems a little bit rich.
Thank you, Councillor Shantz. Councillor Nowak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm going to support Councillor Shantz, and I share her concerns as well. I do have a question. I notice that the cost of the unit is going to be area rated, but I also notice in the report that the area municipality communication, there was no communication with the municipality on this. So do you have the support of the community on this? Do you have the support of the council on this initiative? I wonder if somebody can answer that for me.
Mr. Schmidt? Mr. Dyer? Thomas, you're on mute.
That might have been better. I believe the region does, this is a regional service. It was delivered by Kiwanis. I believe we have the support in the sense of that this service is needed and it's desired to be there. We are trying to provide this in a way that uses newer equipment, is more reliable than what was being supplied before. If the question is, have we gone to each of the councils to get approval for this? No, we have not done that I'm aware of.
I'm not talking each of the councils. I'm talking about the Woolwich Council would be the one that I would think you would want to reach out to. I mean, it is area rated, so why would you not do that?
So we have had meetings with the mayor and CAO concerning this contract.
Have you received their support?
I believe they had concerns with the RFP. I believe we answered those concerns. We have not had any communication since this RFP closed concerning the value of it, again, that I'm aware of.
Councillor Nowak?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment, and I maybe shouldn't, but it just seems to me, and I've been following this because I am on the Kiwanis board as well, but it just seems that this is like a cookie cutter type of solution to this issue. And it would be nice at some time to, when you look at the rural areas, to like Councillor Schantz said, think more outside the box and sort of address the rural areas maybe in a little different fashion than you do with the city areas. So I can't support this as well, and I support Councillor Schantz, and I certainly understand her concerns. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I think Bruce wants to weigh in.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. To Councillor Nowak's question, we did have a meeting with the township and the mayor, and as Councillor Schantz has expressed, there were concerns raised and there continue to be concerns. We've committed out of that meeting, there was a request that we meet with the townships in the future, in the near future, to talk about rural transportation. So not just isolated to this particular instance, but the broader question of rural transportation and going into the future. So we will be setting up that meeting sometime this summer and address these concerns as well as broader concerns that have been raised over the last couple of years.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've been here before, and I'm just curious as to what is different this time than the last time when we decided to allow for this more specialized service that Kiwanis provided and seemed to be satisfactory to the community, and as Councillor Schantz is indicating, at some significant lower cost. So is something else happened in the meantime that staff feel that we needed to go to to the RFP and to some other system other than what the community Woolwich is used to?
Who would like to take that one?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think it was trying to build on the system that was put in place, which I don't believe Kiwanis planned on having that as a permanent solution. The vehicle they used was relatively old. I can't speak to the reliability of it, but it was old. We tried to build on that. The RFP was open for Kiwanis to bid. They had a lot of warning. We talked to them over 2 years ago about this. They felt, I believe, that they could not bid on this, and they did not submit a proposal on this. But really, the impetus for this was to build on that success, to provide a better level of service and a more secure level of service.
Councillor Galloway?
Yeah, it really raises an interesting point, and Councillor Nowak raised it as well. The transit in the rural areas in the townships is dealt with differently. In the cities, if there's a new route being proposed or changes, the city councils don't weigh in on that. Individual councillors might have something to say, but the city councils aren't asked routinely. In the townships. Townships, of course, have more say because of the area rating process. So sometimes it's kind of, you get the feeling that it's having the best of both worlds. But I still am having a problem understanding what is going to be different, notwithstanding, the vehicle may have been old and maybe there were some reliability issues. Of course, we know that can be fixed, not without cost, of course. But it seemed like the community was satisfied with the level of service. So I'm having difficulty as well supporting this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor
Madam
Armstrong.
Chair, the service is actually exactly the same. So the level of service being provided is the same. There's no change in level of service. There's no change in route. It is the same service that was being provided by Kiwanis. What we did is we went and got through an RFP, got a quote for what would the real cost be to deliver the service. And essentially, the price that you're seeing is what would be the real cost of providing that service, to provide the maintenance of the vehicles, to provide a vehicle, to provide the staffing, to provide everything that's required to provide the service.
Yeah, I understand that, Mr. Schmidt. The difference, of course, is that Kiwanis, because it's revered in the community, it gets charitable donations and assistance from the community that then keeps the cost of their service relatively low vis-a-vis, an RFP where company X would provide the service. So there is some. There are some, philosophical issues here that are at play. That's for sure.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, I'm. The concerns, the fact that it's kind of a cookie cutter thing that we're dealing with here. Instead of thinking outside the box, which Kiwanis did with the municipality of Woolwich, and that is something that's important, especially in the rural areas. We have to do that. An example we have of GRT not thinking outside the box or having their box so tight that they cannot expand it to think outside of it is the fact that the buses that Kiwanis uses through the GRT, we have been told that one of the buses that we have to buy for Kiwanis or acquire for Kiwanis is not compatible with the routes that they take. We're being told that the Bus Plus buses that we are supposed to use for Kiwanis as well have to be a certain type, the same as the ones in the city. But unfortunately, GRT isn't listening to the people who drive those buses onto farms in the winter or on rainy weather, that what they're telling us we have to use are not suitable for the job. But they refuse to listen. They said they went out and did a test run, so they did their test run in the city. They didn't drive into any farms in rainy weather or snowy weather. They just drove in the city. And they say, well, no, it works fine. But they haven't listened to the drivers or listened to what Kiwanis said. And this is a case here that they're looking at the fact that, well, this bus needs to be the same as everybody else's, as the other Bus Plus and stuff like that, where it's not necessary. And that's the reason that I wouldn't support it, because they're not being reasonable with the idea that, things in the rural areas are a little different. And I mean, one of the big reasons, one big differences between the service that the GRT is going to provide and what Kiwanis is provide is the price of stepping on the bus. So I will not support.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. I'm going to go to Councillor Foxton and then give Councillor Shantz the last word. So Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Chair. If you've read tonight's agenda, my sympathy to Craig Dyer, as I already told him, he probably has nightmares just looking at the cost of gas and how it's inflated. And we know, with everything that's come across our table in the last 6 months, that we're looking at probably a significant tax increase this year. And then you add on to that an increase of 33% for transit in Woolwich. And if I was the mayor of Woolwich, I would be very concerned for my citizens, just in the overall cost expectations over what's going to happen in the budget, which we will see later on this year. So I'm going to vote against this, basically because I sympathize with my county mayor of Woolwich in caring for her constituents. And this is a heavy pill to swallow. 32% is pretty steep. So thank you.
Councillor Shantz, last word, and then I'll call the question.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong talked about the bus, which was one of the things. I did want to say that Kiwanis Transit did not pick up the RFP. They had set up a separate company so that they could run a separate bus service and have Kiwanis Transit focus on the mobility piece, which is what they've been doing since before GRT took over that contract. The issue was the new buses, having to get new buses when the buses that they have been working fine. And timing, they checked into getting new buses. It was going to be over a year before they could even get a new bus if the cost made sense. The proponent of the RFP, Boyago, is increasing the cost because they have to get new buses. So a lot of the cost increase is because of the new buses, which is the reason Kiwanis didn't respond to the RFP. So I just wanted to add that piece. Yeah.
Okay, I see Councillor Ravanovich's hand, but I said I was going to call the question. So unless this is something that's going to make your head pop off.
Well, not pop off, except, Madam Chair, I'm wondering if, quite frankly, we should be deferring this issue, because I'm empathetic to where, Councillor Shantz is coming from on behalf of her municipality, and we're hearing from a number of our rural colleagues. If we vote on it now, it kills it. Whereas if we defer it and allow for additional dialogue to go on, it actually allows more work to happen. And I think that would be helpful. And so I guess I'd be prepared to move that deferral.
So you're moving a deferral to what time?
I guess I would ask either Mr. Lochner or Councillor Shantz how much time they think they need.
Sorry? A month? Okay. Mr. Lochner is suggesting a month. Do I have a seconder for that deferral first? Okay, Councillor McGarry. Craig, is a month enough time?
I believe it is, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so the deferral is that this would come back in a month. So I'm now going to call a question on the deferral. All those in favor, please use your icons. So that is carried. That is deferred for a month, colleagues. So we're now at 12.2, committee reports, community services summary. Councillor Foxton, was this the one that you were worried about? Okay. So I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. This is really good news. This is about additional affordable housing. All those in favor, please use your icons to vote yes or no. That is carried. Colleagues, I now would entertain a motion to approve the summary from Planning and Works Committee. Councillor Foxton, was this the one you were worried about? Oh, okay, we're just going to keep going. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Nowak. Please use your icons to vote yes and no, or no. I guess you don't get to vote for both. That is carried. Next item is Administration and Finance Summary. Bingo, Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's on page 37. It's the item in regards to the lame duck, and a lot of it gives authority to the Chief Financial Officer to approve the use of regional reserves and reserve funds as required to fund affordable supportive housing projects, not a problem, and approve grants in accordance with existing council-approved policies to cover the cost of regional development charges, to leverage federal and provincial funding for affordable supportive housing projects. Is there a set amount, or can they do whatever they want? I know we had a lot of discussion on the amount that was allowed at the last meeting. I believe in the last lame duck, we did have an amount set, and I could be wrong, Mr. Dyer, and you can correct me, but I thought we had an amount of, was it 500,000 or $1 million?
So, Madam Chair, if I recall correctly, I believe that there was an amount set relating to the award of tenders. I don't think that there was an amount set with respect to the provision of development charge grants, which would be calculated in a very prescriptive manner, right? So it would be the number of eligible units multiplied by the applicable development charge at the time. I don't recall a limit being put on those, on the funding of such grants.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder for Administration and Finance Committee? Moved by Councillor Jowett, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Please use your icons to vote. That is carried. Colleagues, we have closed Planning and Works Summary, May 10th, 2022. I need a mover and a seconder for this. There are two parts to this. Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favor or opposed, please use your icons. That is carried, colleagues. Next item is the closed Administration and Finance Summary. And this is, part of this is a lease extension at 150 Main. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Galloway, seconded by Councillor Clark. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. That is carried, colleagues. Stick with me, guys. So, Chief Administrative Officer, do you have anything to report? Mr. Clerk. So, the next agenda item is the Canada-Ontario Community Housing Initiative and Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative Year 4 Investment Plan and Canadian-Ontario Housing Benefit Year 4 Allocation. Aaron Rolls will introduce this report.
Through you, Madam Chair. This report outlines what is required through the Canada-Ontario Community Housing Initiative. The requirement is that a plan be submitted for the allocation of the funds. So we have put that together and are requesting council approve the recommended investment plan.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, do you have a question?
I'll certainly move that, but I did just have a question. The priority groups that the plan identifies, do we have a sense of what percentage of our total wait list for affordable housing would fall into those priority groups of the 6,000 to 7,000 households we have? Are we talking about perhaps 10% falling in those groups?
I see Mr. Petitpier has lit up his square. Ryan, can you answer this?
Not exactly, Madam Chair. To the question, we haven't done that comparative analysis, Councillor Clark, so I am hesitant to throw out just my on it. Happy to run those numbers comparing the priority populations specified with our existing wait list. We can do that and provide that information back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not really it's not relevant to my support of the motion, but I do note that we talk in terms of our total numbers on our wait list for housing, but we really, despite everything that we're doing, we're really seeming to focus our efforts on the people at the highest need, which is probably appropriate, but at the same time, I'm just wondering whether we need to rethink at some point the overall wait list and how we address it.
Thank you. Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The level of funding that we receive from the upper levels of government for these initiatives has been very, very generous over the years. And as I understand the history, when the region inherited ownership and maintenance of the affordable housing stock, the transfer of funds to maintain this housing stock has been significant. However, what has not been as generous and regular is the growth of funding for the Ontario Priority Housing Initiative, which is part of the RFPs which we submit to the general community. And so in fiscal year 2019-21, we received 3.8 million. Then in 21-22, it decreased to 2 million. 2023, it's projected to be 3.1 million, but then in 23-24, it's going to be down to 2.8 million. And I don't think anyone is arguing that we need to maintain our current stock, but that funding is not going to build more units. And if we are not receiving a regular level of funding to build more units, we're not going to be meeting our goal. So I think it's just important to recognize that level of funding, it varies, it's up and it's going down in the next year. And we can continue to need to advocate to the upper levels of government that while we want to maintain the stock, that it's acceptable for residents to live in, we need the funds to build more units to decrease that waiting list.
Councillor Erb, that's a very good point and very relevant to the next report as well. Are you prepared to second the recommendations that Councillor?
I'm happy to do that. Happy to do that.
Thank you. So moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Erb. I take it that we were just pointing that out, Councillor Erb. You don't want staff to respond other than that we'll take that away as petitioning upper levels of government for more sustainable funding.
Yep.
Great. Okay, then feel free to vote, which some of you have already done. That is carried, colleagues, and Councillor Erb, I think that's a really, really relevant point. As I believe Craig Dyer would agree, the next item is financial update, fuel prices and inflation. And I'll turn it over to you, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and you've had a very long day, so I'll be brief. You'll recall that we had provided an update to Council based on the financial results to the first quarter. Back in April, we outlined some of the risks that we were monitoring with respect to the region's 2022 budget. Two of those risks identified at the time were the price of fuel and the rate of inflation. And so we thought it would be helpful tonight just to provide a quick overview of those two items specifically. And to Councillor Foxton's comments from earlier on, I think the charts in the appendix probably say it all. And as everyone is aware, we've had a significant and material escalation in the price of fuel since the beginning of the year and in the rate of inflation since the latter part of last year. So in the report, we outlined some of the specifics around what we budgeted, keeping in mind that we had put our budgets together as early as the summer of last year, and we're using inflation rates at the time and looking at fuel prices in the fall of last year. And so the rates that we chose, even looking back, seem reasonable relative to what we were paying at the time, and even reasonable relative to what the projections were for this year. So I don't think anybody expected that either of these would run as high as they are. We are experiencing significant variances on the fuel side. If prices stayed, near their current levels, we could see a variance in the $7.5 to $9 million range. I think the other context I could give is, I think two main points. First of all, variances are not new. There are always expenditure and revenue variances over the course of the year. We're very accustomed to monitoring and reporting on these types of variances. The fuel one, admittedly, is a little bit larger, more significant than usual. That being said, we're $1 billion plus organization, and we have to look at it in the context of our overall budget. So while we are experiencing shortfalls on the fuel and inflation side, we are doing some work right now to get a preliminary estimate of where we think our year-end position might be, which is a little bit tricky to do in May. But we do intend to bring a report forward to committees on June the 7th with a high-level projection of our financial position and any mitigation options that we might have to deal with this variance. So more information to follow on June the 7th, but I hope tonight's brief report was helpful context for you. Thank you.
So, Mr. Dyer, I think I speak on behalf of all council when I say, we all appreciate your acumen and your demeanor. It must have been a real temptation to turn your mic on and say the sky is falling. So thank you very much for not doing that. It gives us all hope.
It's my pleasure. And if I may, if it's appropriate, I would concur with Councillor Erb's remarks with respect to the need for predictable and stable funding for housing in the future. That was very well said.
You are allowed. Thank you. I don't see any, a few gasps, but no questions. Councillor Galloway.
Well, not a question, but a comment, or I guess it is a question. Mr. Dyer, where do you get that crystal ball that in May you can predict the future? To the end of the year. I want to get me one of those crystal balls.
Yeah. We were. It was suggested in a meeting the other day that the crystal ball budget had been cut, and so we don't have one of those either.
Okay. Well done.
Thank you very much for that. Colleagues, I will now entertain a motion for committee of the whole to rise and council to resume. Moved by Councillor McGarry, seconded by Councillor Shantz. Please use your icons to vote. That is carried, colleagues. We are now in council. I now need a motion to adopt proceedings of the committee of the whole. Moved by Councillor Nowak, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Please use your icons to vote that council adopt the proceedings of the committee of the whole. That is carried. Colleagues, we have no motions, no notices of motions, unfinished business, but we do have other business. There's a Transportation and Environmental Service report to community. But because this is his last council meeting, we cannot let this opportunity pass without recognizing Thomas Schmidt's 32 years of public service to the region of Waterloo and to our residents. We have been so fortunate to have Thomas's knowledge, dedication, and leadership at the region since 1990. First in the Design and Construction Division, then as Director of Water Services before becoming the Commissioner of Transportation and Environmental Services in 2004. Under Thomas's leadership, the region has provided safe, reliable, and world-class services that residents use every day, including our clean drinking water, waste management, public transit, and roads. CEO Bruce Lochner would like to also mention some of the highlights of Thomas's time at the region.
Thanks, Chair Redmond. Hi, Thomas. Thomas, on behalf of your colleagues at the corporate leadership team, as well as the entire staff team, I want to thank you for your dedication and leadership over the last many decades. During your time at the region, you've ensured that the Transportation and Environment Services Department has evolved to serve our growing community. We'd originally planned to start this around 9:30, but since we're at 10:30, I'll cut the list of your accomplishments down to just a few. Thomas oversaw the construction and delivery of the Ion Light Rail Transit System, a project that we know has already shaped our community and will continue to shape our community for generations to come. The Ion is now complemented by many kilometers of active transportation infrastructure and a really innovative Grand River Transit System, which has almost doubled its ridership under your tenure. You've helped advance our work on climate action. You oversaw the introduction of a green bin program and helped divert waste programs and other programs that have dramatically changed how we interact with our environment. These are pivotal initiatives that have helped us reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I know this is near and dear to your heart. You've made various upgrades to wastewater treatment plants under your leadership, making the Grand River a significantly cleaner and healthier ecosystem for all to enjoy. We know that's so important for this region, particularly when it comes to our source of water. And underpinning all of this has been your work to mold strong, innovative, and progressive leaders and staff in TES. You leave behind a very cohesive professional team that has embraced your kindness, your open door policy, and your genuine passion for making the region of Waterloo a better place to work, play, and travel. Thomas, I know I will have an opportunity to say more tomorrow night at another celebration. So with that, a huge thank you, and back to Chair Redmond.
So Thomas, on behalf of Regional Council, we wish you all the best in your retirement. We truly enjoyed working with you, and we will miss you a great deal. We're happy knowing that you will be enjoying many sunny days on your bike, enjoying life with Madonna and your dogs Lily, Oscar, and Henry, who we have met sometimes and certainly heard from time to time on Zoom calls. As you move on to this next stage of your life, know that you have left the region better off because of your hard work and your dedication. Know that you leave us with an incredible infrastructure, with world-class services, and with an amazing professional team that will continue your legacy. Thomas, we are in your debt. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now we'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. And this isn't quite the way this was supposed to go. This is actually Transportation and Environmental Services 2021 report on all the great things that the department that for another week or so has done over the last year. And I'll start with that. I think the report just shows the dedication of the staff that you have in Transportation Environmental Services, the work that they do on a day-to-day basis to deliver the services that touch everyone, that touch every single person. You'll notice in the report today that today that we've made quite a few changes. It's very digital. It has videos in it. It is, if you go onto the region's website, it's on the banner right now. You can click on it, and even I have a video in there. Not, I never like watching my own videos because I never think I look all that good, but it is in there with the message, as well as Chair Galloway. I also want to, because of the big changes we made in the report, I want to thank the people that helped put it together. And there's not a long list, but a medium length list of MJ Milholmes, Tim Walton, Donna Cerati, Kathleen Barsoom, Catherine McCall, Matthew O'Neill, Melissa Murray, Phil Bauer, Adriana Jenkins, Ian Dugan, and Amy White were all the individuals that put this together as a representation of all the great work that was done last year. It is the end. It's my last report. It's my last council meeting. I have been so fortunate to have been supported by council, and all of TES staff have been so fortunate to be supported by council over all those years. And I can still remember, we were in the Marsland Center, and when we did presentations to staff, I recall Fred Kent being there. I think some of you probably remember Fred.
Oh, yeah.
And I also remember when you did a presentation there, it was worse than Zoom, because there was this big pillar that blocked off the view for half of council, for whoever was doing a presentation. But even with all those technical difficulties and issues with that room, council has supported the Transportation Environmental Services Department with almost anything that we did. The changes in GRT that were mentioned, those are all because of the support that you provided and the investments that you made that allowed us to build, I think, a great transit system, the ION system. Bruce mentioned the river, and I like that story because, and there's going to be a report that I'll miss at our next Planning and Works Committee meeting on that. But it really was the biggest project. The upgrades to our wastewater treatment plants was, from a regional investment perspective, really the biggest project financially that we did, not the ION, for just regional dollars. And the impact that it's had on the Grand River is huge. The Grand River is for sure cleaner now than it's been in the last 120 years, at least. And you'll hear from Nancy Kadusik that some of the fish issues that you heard about a few years ago, they're all gone. The fish are healthy. Not the fish are all gone. The fish are all healthy. And in fact, not only are the fish healthy, if you talk to the GRCA, they're talking about people catching pickerel in Cambridge, where a few short years ago, that would have been carp. And that's a story that not many people hear. And that's over $350 million that this council, that you invested in making that huge change in the river. And it's something I'm proud of. I'm proud of the staff that worked on it. And I think you should be proud of the contribution and your commitment to fixing the river, not just for us, but for everyone downstream of us, everyone that uses it. So there's another event tomorrow. I have some other things I'd like to say tomorrow, but today I'll just end with thank you for all of your support. It has been great. I have had a very fortunate career. In some ways, I'm sad it's over. Other ways, I know it's the right time for me to go. So thank you all.
Thomas, thank you so much. Is that a thumbs up, or do you want to make a comment, Councillor Foxton?
I want to make a comment because I can't be there tomorrow, Thomas. I have like 8 meetings tomorrow. Congratulations. Do you mind if I still send you emails after you're gone? Because it'll take me a while to withdraw.
You can still send emails. I'll give you my personal email and you can send them, but I won't have any ability to get anything done.
You did an amazing job, and thank you so much for every time I turned to you, I knew I was going to get an answer, and I knew you were going to look into it or deal with it. And I am very, very appreciative. And we're better for it. Thank you so much. And you so deserve a break. And I hope you watch these meetings sometimes and laugh.
Thomas, thank you for the lovely report, and thank you for an outstanding career of building community. I have seen no questions. I will now take a motion to enact the bylaws first, second, and third readings. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor McGarry, seconded by Councillor Foxton. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. Councillor Bravanovich, are you voting, or is that a legacy? You're just waving. Okay, that's so friendly. Thank you. So now we've come to that time of the evening where we have to, I'm sorry, bid each other adieu, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded by Councillor Armstrong, but we'll count Councillor Foxton as one of those. If you would please use your icons to vote yes or no. Thank you, colleagues. That is carried. Have a great evening.
And as usual, safe drive home, everyone.
Thanks all. Good night.